All right, hey everybody. Today we are going to be learning about the early Middle Ages. Okay, so the early Middle Ages are from about 500, so collapse of the Roman Empire, to 1000 AD or CE, Common Era, whichever you prefer. And this kind of emerges or happens in Europe because of the invading Germanic tribes, which leads to the crumbling of ruling in Rome. Because of these Germanic invasions, you no longer have a emperor in 476 within Rome, so there's no centralized government throughout Europe. So what's going to happen to Europe? Well, the Middle Ages are oftentimes referred to as the Dark Ages because there's very little literary or cultural output from Europe during that time, and towns begin to decline, population is going to decline, especially when we start talking about the late Middle Ages. But let's see what happened. So, after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, Germanic and Scandinavian kingdoms are going to emerge as powerful forces. Scandinavian kingdoms, the Vikings, yeah, they're pretty awesome, pretty powerful. All right. Germanic civilization is going to be influenced by various cultural forces that are still in play within Europe, and they are going to establish themselves throughout Europe. Now, what are the cultural foundations of the medieval period? Well, this classical heritage of Rome, being Roman, when we see the rise of Charlemagne and his kingdom, he turns this Frankish kingdom into what's named the Holy Roman Empire. This, like, tracing it back to Roman roots and this dive back to the love and the glory days of Rome. Next are going to be Christian beliefs. Um, Clovis the First is going to be our first Frankish king to adopt Christianity after winning a battle, a military battle. He Fun little story. In the battle, he's like, Jesus Christ, if you're real and I win this thing, because he's losing at the time, but he's like, if you're real and I win, then I will worship you and I will be baptized in your name. And then all of a sudden, his enemies start fleeing. And so he converts to Christianity, and then his wife had been nagging him to convert for a long time, but that battle is what changes him. So anyway, and then the custom of Germanic tribes. All right, there's no Roman government, so there's no Roman law. The family unit is very important within Germanic tribes. The mother, father, children, that unit as a whole. All right, so then since we don't have laws in play, and since we don't have laws in place, since we don't have court systems, then you are going to have vendettas, right? Ordeals. You've got the war guild, the money for a man. What is this? What is this that I'm talking about? Vendetta, all right? Blood feuds between families. Um, an ordeal is the act of punishment, but if the person that your punishment goes unharmed, then that was divine intervention. That was intervention by God. So that's why that person didn't get harmed. And the war guild was this act of, if you kill somebody's life, everybody's life has a price. You kill someone, you're going to have to pay a price to that person's family. So these are some of the customs that we see emerging. And then we get the Stop Hammer Time Franks. Remember, I told you about Charles Martel and the Battle of Tours. And he was called the Hammer, right? Because he dropped the hammer down on Muslim invaders at Tours, okay? And he stopped the spread of not only the Islamic Empire, but Islam within France. So the Frankish kings used conquest to expand their territory. And they also have an alliance between themselves, the kings, and the Pope. Okay, papal authority is going to increase during this time. We talked about when we talked about the Byzantine Empire, Pope Gregory the First, and how he took control of lands throughout Italy and renamed them papal states. So the Pope has a lot of not only religious clout, but political clout as well. And so, beginning with Clovis, you have this relationship developing between kings and the church, because the Roman Catholic Pope backed Clovis. And then later on down the line, when we get to 800 CE, the Roman Catholic Pope, is going to coronate or declare that Charlemagne is emperor. So he's going to crown Charlemagne emperor into this renamed, not Frankish kingdom, but the Holy Roman Empire. All right, tying the land and the Pope and the king and all that stuff together. All right. So, under the leadership of Charlemagne, the Franks are going to enter in Western Europe as a force. Pope Leo is going to crown him emperor on Christmas Day. The crowning of the emperor by the Pope established the church's political power. And Charlemagne is going to drive back this love of literacy, literature, wanting to educate the people. And he's going to have churches, roads, and schools built to unite this new Holy Roman Empire. Um, However, that is going to be short lived, because after his death, other Germanic tribes come in and start invading. But anyway. Classical Roman Latin was revived as the language of scholars, but began to disappear slowly but surely as these Germanic invaders came in, and was replaced by languages with Latin roots, such as French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and the such. So Europe begins to look like we see it today, begins to start looking a little and sounding a little bit more modern. Now, in the PowerPoint lesson, you have an episode of the Dark Ages. All right. You do have some questions that go along with this, and it's through multiple slides. It goes over the fall of Rome. And excuse me. Um, so that the waning empire, fall of Rome. Um, Sorry, I'm going to try Christianity, the rise of Christianity, Empire Strikes Back, the plague, which we're going to talk about next week, a little bit more detail. Men of the Cloth, so church scholars, a holy war, the Crusades, the Vikings, the Crusades again, and conclusion. But let's talk about for a minute these Angles, Saxons, and Magyars. Oh my, and the Germanic tribes. We're also going to be talking about the ones from Scandinavia, the Vikings. But the Vikings are from Scandinavia, which is me pointing to my computer is not helping you, is right here. This on the outskirts is Viking homeland. All right. Then the Angles and Saxons were from continental Europe, and they migrated into Britain. Remember, the Britain was occupied by Roman troops. In the 5th century, they began to leave, leaving a place for the Angles and Saxons, or the Anglo-Saxons as we know them today, to come in. Okay, and the Franks, the Frankish kingdom, what becomes the Holy Roman Empire, is right here. Modern day France and parts of Germany. And then, so are Angles and Saxons. All right. I didn't put Magyars in there. I should have. I'm so sorry. The Magyars were from Central Europe and they migrated to Hungary. And the Angles and Saxons migrated to England. Both were tribal units led by chieftains. The invasions led by both disrupted trade, caused towns to decline, and is going to institute or reinforce what we're going to talk about in a minute called the feudal system. After converting to Christianity, the Anglo-Saxons and Magyars are going to adopt literacy. The Vikings, all right, the Vikings attack took place mostly in the 9th and 10th centuries. So from about 800 to 900, they were, of course, tribal units led by chieftains. Their lack of arable land on Scandinavia led them to explore and invade, kill, steal, and pillage their way through Europe and other places. Their invasions, of course, disrupted trade and caused towns to decline as well, because monasteries were not off limits to Vikings. They would steal and kill their way through those too. Um, we see that as barbaric. That's why they were called barbarian tribes by many cultures. Okay. The Vikings observed a polytheistic religion, Norse mythology. All right. Viking attacks contributed to the collapse of the Frankish Empire, that empire founded by Charlemagne. The Vikings settled in areas known today as Russia, Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. And the Vikings participated in Eastern European sea and river trade as they grew. All right, this shows you the raiding and trading routes of the Vikings, areas that they settled, and areas of heavy Viking raiding. All right, you see they're mainly along the coast because they had really big ships. Oh my, what do we do? People are invading. Let me find my shoes. All right, what does this mean? How are people going to protect themselves against these Germanic tribes? They have no centralized government to protect them. So who's going to protect them? Well, I'll tell you who, the local leaders, the rich people throughout society. Kings are going to grant land, okay? So you've got Charlemagne is going to grant land to people, all right, to the nobles. And the nobles are going to break that land up, and it's called a fief. A fief could be land, money, or a title, all right, but oftentimes it was land. And so the noble is going to break this fief up to vassals. Vassals are lesser lords, so they're below a noble on the social hierarchy, okay? So they break up that land. The vassals are then going to provide some land to the serfs. The serfs are simply there to work the land for protection. So this leads to feudalism and the manorial system. Okay. So feudalism emerged gradually between the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the collapse of Charlemagne or the Carolingian Empire, okay, in the 10th century. Fiefs are land, money, or title given to a vassal. A vassal is a local lord, all right, who is below the nobles. Okay, a serf is a peasant that simply just works the land. They are tied to the land in which they work. And everybody had a feudal obligation. That's their obligation or agreement for to either serve in the military, offer protection, or work the land. All right, so this is how feudalism works. The king provides money and army on demand. Okay, excuse me, the nobility provides money and army on demand, and the king is going to bestow on his many nobles land. Okay, the nobility are going to bestow land to as many knights or vassals, and knights and vassals are going to bestow land, right? Excuse me, are going to bestow service, and then we should also have another section down here. Vassals, under vassals, should be a serf. A serf is going to provide food on demand. Okay. The serf is going to provide food on demand. The vassal is going to provide military service. The knight is going to provide military service. The nobility are going to give over their armies to the king whenever he needs it. Okay. So peasants are serfs. They provide food and services to knights and vassals. Knights and vassals provide protection and military service to the nobles and the kings. Okay. The king provides land, the noble provides land, the knights and vassals provide land and protection to the peasants living within the manor. The manor system is tied to feudalism. Okay. It normally encompasses the house or the manor house, which is oftentimes a castle. All right, that's why a castle was on at the beginning of the slideshow. It has a rigid social structure. If you're a serf, you're not going to be anything above a serf. If you're a knight or vassal, you're going to stay within that. If you're a noble, you got the main house. Everybody else is working for you and making sure your land is protected. Oftentimes, you would have a moat and a drawbridge around the castle. and oftentimes walls as well. Self-sufficient manners. Everything that is needed is produced on the manor. Okay, everything that is needed is produced on the manor. So, um, if you need food, if you need clothing, it's produced right there. Towns are going to decline because of this. Okay. That is all we have for the early Middle Ages. I hope that you have enjoyed. Late Middle Ages is coming to you next week, and that's where we'll talk about the declining populations of Europe due to the Black Death and the Crusades. So stay tuned. See you next time, guys.